everybody, and welcome to Mad Realm's Vote to Kick. I'm your host, Jim, and with me again, Fenris. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's going on? Good, good. How was your day?
I'm tired. I walked for an hour.
Because of the working out, not because of work.
Yeah,
work.
no. I actually worked from home today because my car is sad, and I need to
It's sad.
It makes
emotion.
Well, it makes a very sad creaking noise whenever I turn, so I want to drive it as little as possible. Thankfully, I have an appointment to get it looked at tomorrow, but hey, I don't want the tire to fall off while I'm driving on the highway.
No, you don't.
I already did, Wispy. We don't have to record PogG.
Then we won't be able to do podcasts anymore, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, no, it'd be bad. So, before we get into the topic for tonight, we're getting back to the channel's roots, getting into some Guild Wars 2 specific stuff. Time to talk about the poll results from last week. Large-scale changes in competitive game modes. I talked with Age last week. Poll is right here. The keeps have it. I was actually kind of surprised it was as small a gap as it is.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sad I missed it because I don't really think I've seen Age do this show.
Yeah,
it's only been on a few times, right? Because I know his schedule.
Well, it's originally like when I first started Vote to Kick, he wasn't available for most of it because he was in crunch week, and then the first show he came back, it was mandatory overtime.
I was like, then he did a podcast about it.
I kind of wanted him for that when he had time for it, so I kind of scheduled that in advance. But yeah, 11 votes. It was pretty solidly on keep. People are actually kind of big on the shakeups, apparently.
I assumed you guys kept it within the Guild Wars 2 era, or did you?
No, I was talking about the Warclaw. We were talking about new characters in Overwatch, new champions or reworks in League, heroes in Dota, stuff like that.
Oh, cool, nice.
So it's really just Age was much more a big fan of like incremental changes, so that balance didn't swing wildly, and my point was that sometimes balance stagnates because I mentioned that WW never really felt any different from when I first started playing the game till now, and now that the Warclaw exists, people literally are forced to change the way they strategize. Yeah, and Age also lost his voice a little bit, so.
Is that when he just came back from Miami?
Yeah.
It's the clubs, man. He was in the clubs screaming.
Yeah. He won't say it, but yeah. But, ladies and gentlemen, our topic for tonight, more PvE content in Guild Wars 2, ! Poll in the chat for the link to the poll right there, so you can cast your vote. I'm going to be arguing kick, and I'll explain. My kick has a caveat, but Fenris is you could be arguing keep tonight, right?
Yeah, so I guess the keep side of things is kind of obvious. Keep as in we need more
content. Right.
More PvE content. And it's not that you want to kick PvE content. Yeah, it's a little bit more like intricate than that, but I guess you'll explain. I was going to say, we probably should have talked about it a little bit beforehand, so I know what you're going to say, but I guess I don't know what you're going to say, so we'll see.
Well, that's the fun part.
So yeah, I am a huge advocate for more PvE content in Guild Wars 2, and I have been for a long time, probably since Heart of Thorns came out, where I noticed this. I guess it started within lack of lore, I feel, within Guild Wars 2 that could have been implemented through PvE content. One huge thing that we've lost since vanilla Guild Wars 2 is dungeons. I think there's room in the game for maybe like during an expansion, not necessarily a living world update, but to rework dungeons entirely, like do something totally new with them. Because Guild Wars 2's roots was essentially doing things new. So I don't think doing dungeons new again is like out of the question for them. Right now for PvE content, and I could be missing something, but besides holidays and festivals, it's pretty much just living world, maybe some new weapons, some new armor sets, some new collections, and then of course the living world episode itself. And correct me if I'm wrong, Malthanis, I think that's it, right? Like there's really, besides maybe something rare every so often, I feel like that's the PvE content we're getting for the
living world, current events and holidays.
Yeah, yeah.
And then technically fractals and raids are bundled in with PvE.
Yeah, I would put them in with, those updates. And I just don't feel we're getting enough. Or maybe that it's the fact that what we're getting is just been the groove for a while now. The living world is something we're very acclimated to at this point. An occasional fractal every now and again, which I like fractals. I still actually haven't done the new one, which is saying something. You haven't either? Yeah, I don't have the motivation to go do it because I feel like
I don't think I've done either. Like I haven't done the past 2 fractals.
I forget which one is the past, like the second one. I forget. I really do. I don't think it's the one in Alona. Somebody could probably say it in chat and it'd be obvious. But yeah, Guild Wars 2 lacks really motivative PvE content outside of the Living World episodes. Of course they're good, but like once I'm finished the Living World, I'm done. Like sometimes I stick with it for a week or two after and I do some collections because I'm motivated to and I like the content. But last episode I just fell off. I feel like there's room for Guild Wars 2 to implement some really cool PvE content, whether that's an expansion or in a patch. More so an expansion, because I feel like the PvE content that I'm thinking about is really like jumping more than one or two rungs here. Like something really new that's really going to get people to go, oh, wow. It's not just a new raid. It's not just a new fractal. It's, let's rehaul dungeons. Let's bring like some new life into that and also tell some cool stories along the way. And I think ArenaNet is totally capable of that. They've made Guild Wars 2, which revolutionized, I guess, the current space of MMOs. So I don't think it's out of the question for them to do that, but they just don't seem to do it.
Is that the end of opening arguments? Okay, cool. So in a general sense, I think, and I'm applying this to both of us because we are longtime players of the game, we kind of take for granted the amount of PvE content that is available in Guild Wars 2. Like,
can you explain that a little bit?
So we have been doing all of the stuff as it comes out for the most part.
Correct.
Since however long. Like, I think I started playing again right before Nightmare Tower in Season 1. And I've been playing rather steadily since. Mm-hmm. Recently I haven't been doing PvE, but that's because just time constraints. I haven't had the time really to be doing anything. There is an awful lot of PvE content. I know people are split on crafting and whether or not they like it. That's PvE content. You've got the collections, and I'm talking all of the collections. Technically, the personal story is PvE content. I realize that after you play it 2 or 3 times, it's kind of tedious to get through.
And I mean, I guess let me like clarify a point. Sorry to like interrupt, but like I guess I'm talking about PvE content like that's new, not necessarily stuff that already exists. Because I guess like I totally didn't even think about personal story, but like nobody's really doing that anymore. At least older players, That's such a second thought. It's so long.
I started doing it if only to mess with my Steam controller.
Yeah, right.
So and I still need to hop back on that char and work on that because that's about the only way I'm ever going to play a Revenant. But in a general sense, if you're talking about new stuff, I think it's not necessarily, and again, to kind of re-clarify, I am not looking to reduce the amount of PvE content that is put into the game. Yeah. I think the rate at which it's being added is fine. However, the problem I'm having is that the way PvE content is being added to the game means that it is done very quickly. Correct. So no, Deo, I will not be using my Google Stadia controller. I don't even think I'll ever own a Google Stadia controller.
Will you stream Guild Wars 2 from your Chrome browser?
No. No. Working from home and other projects that I do will always mean I will have a decent rig at home, so I will always prefer to have something installed here. But that's besides the point. I do not think that a new map with every living story update is a good idea.
I agree.
I do not think that the way PvE content is implemented is a good thing. I believe that this is a scorched earth policy that causes older and older maps to fall behind, so group events become harder and harder to do because there's nobody in the maps, and it just stretches the player base out more and more. Mega servers are a thing, but mega servers can only function so much.
Yeah.
So what we end up having is we have all these huge maps, beautiful maps. I love the new map with the latest living story. I flew from Thunderhead Keep down to where the dredge refineries were on my Griffin, and it was absolutely fantastic. I loved every second of it. I still remember it. I streamed it.
I do really like that zone. I will put that in there.
But I don't remember the past couple maps for Living Story.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, honestly, before you said keep, I forgot what the zone was for last one.
I legitimately... The only reason I remember Istan is because the farm keeps getting nerfed.
Yeah, yeah, people still go there.
All of the maps are just
cookie cutter.
Well, I don't want to call them cookie cutter because that, like, if you say, oh, they have 4 hearts and this many vistas and this many points of interest, and that's cookie cutter. You can't look at a map and just say they have these things, they're all the same, because the actual terrain is different every single time. You can't call it cookie cutter if it isn't literally the same every single time.
Maybe it isn't cookie cutter. I have an analogy, and it's really a random one, but just stick with me. After World War II, when veterans came home and started like living again, they built houses and under the GI Bill, and those houses were like, they're not like cookie cutter, but they were all built the same, so they
row
can build
housing. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, like just like they're being built really quick, and like maybe and like
because they mass produce the frames and just truck them in.
That's exactly. Yeah. That's what I feel like is happening. They're not like, it's not like to the degree what I'm saying in that analogy, but like it feels like the zones are just like being built like, you know, one after another, and like
because there you go. There's a framework, and that's something that happens in gaming in a general sense. Like, you will always have a framework that people follow, and you're not ever like, you could say that all of the original Guild Wars 2 maps were cookie cutter because they all had hearts, and that's basically the same level of cookie cutter that the new Living Story maps are. My particular issue with the current batch of maps, and pretty much all of Path of Fire in general, is that they lack the punch of Heart of Thorns meta maps. Like, Auric Basin, the number of hours I spent in Auric Basin, because I loved that. I just love the meta event. Now, I'm not saying that I want all of the maps to be meta maps, because that's just, like, nobody liked that in Heart of Thorns either until I started introducing the Season 2 stuff. Or the Season 3 stuff. Sorry. But they're forgettable. I don't remember a lot of the Path of Fire opening maps. I haven't completed them.
It's hard to like even like I completed them, like map completion wise. I assume is what you meant. What you meant by that. Yeah, it's just like
I don't remember those maps the way I remember Dry Top or the Silver Wastes.
Yeah,
I will admit I think Dry Top and the Silver Waste were probably the 2 best implementations where it is a single. Well, it's 2 maps, but it took an entire season to reveal those 2 maps.
And I would hate to say that the meta event was the reason why you remember them, because half the reason I am critical of Heart of Thorns is because of meta events. I hate meta events. I think they're just not a good way to do every map. You can't do every map with a goddamn meta event.
Oh no, I completely agree. I 100% agree. However, I think they missed with making the Path of Fire maps bigger to accommodate mounts. they missed being able to have story events expand a map.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
it's kind of like, and this is kind of where I say I want. It's still the same amount of PvE content because you're still expanding the map, and it kind of allows for time locking to be a little bit more malleable, because Heart of Thorns maps, Mordremoth is still alive when we already know that Kralkatorrik is dead when we go back there. So Kralkatorrik. Yeah, no, Kralkatorrik is dead. Like, I'm talking about, like, past Mordremoth, Kralk is dead.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where in the future, like, another dragon will be dead, and then, you know, we'll have replaced it, and it's just one of those things where time locking is something that just bothers me. That's why I like Season 1. The world changing, being able to miss things. That's just a thing that I think games like this need for a living story and a living world. But okay, I'm getting a little muddled on my point here. What I'm saying is they need to condense what they're releasing, or they risk stretching the player base too far. They need PvE events. They need some meta maps to allow repeatability. Because, I mean, how many times did you do Verdant Brink?
A lot.
Yeah, and I did too. And I don't necessarily remember every single time I did it. It's not necessarily memorable, but it was enjoyable because there was always something to do. The Path of Fire maps are very open, and at some points they are boring. And I say boring in that if you don't stop and you appreciate, you know, the landscape.
Which you don't do after the first or second time.
Right, because you've seen it already and your brain just kind of glosses over it because that's the way human brains work. If you don't give people a reason to continue to be there, they're not going to want to be there. Like, at this point, Path of Fire maps, people go there for the bounty train. And that's fine. Like, if you want the open exploration maps, have the bounty trains there for semi-repeatable content within a given map. But we also need the meta maps to give people a repeatable thing to do and to not be bored. I will admit, like, running through any of the Path of Fire areas, I do not feel the pressure that I felt in the jungle at any point in time.
I think that's just the design of the map. Like,
well, even still, like, even the enemies, I don't feel the pressure from the enemies either.
But, like, I would even say, like, that in Heart of Thorns is sometimes a bad thing. I found like Tangled Depths is a great example. That map is just designed. It's so intricate that it's bad, in my opinion.
Tangled Depths is a.
It's a fucking.
Note to self: don't let Arlie drive. Yeah, we were following Arlie once, and I think we all ended up more lost. Okay, I'm gonna catch up with chat here.
I've been meaning to get to a few points in chat, but we just haven't gotten there.
But the story is focused on Crocker Knights and Desert Stop Destruction.
While you're reading on Wispy's point, like he or she is kind of right. We are like, you know, like we our maps are in between like the end goal zone of where like Kralkatorrik is or whatever's going on, but I think if we got a random zone, let's say, I think it's between Gandaren and Kessex. There's that one, no. Lion's Arch and Gandaren or Kessex? There's a square in the middle of Kryta that we haven't gotten to. I would love to get a zone there because guess what? It's probably going to be something a little bit random that we're going to go do. And I feel like that creates a better opportunity to tell maybe some side lore, which is I've always talked about is an issue in Guild Wars 2. There's no like side shit going on. It's all main story content. There is
the current events.
It's not enough, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, like Quo says, the Tengu camp, the Tengu city.
No, the Tengu city that
is on the western side of Lion's Arch.
It's that island, isn't it?
No, it's in between.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. Well, Okay, well, still, like, we could go
The domain of
anywhere
the
in the
winds.
vanilla
Thank you,
world.
Tavik.
We could fill in zones there. That would be cool. But like, yeah, this like the story's not going to bring us there. But I feel like I wouldn't mind seeing a zone that isn't in Alona back. And again,
We've had
like
several zones that aren't in Alona.
For
Season
Path of Fire?
For this season, yeah.
Oh shit, we have.
Thunderhead Keep isn't in Alona.
Yeah, what am I talking about? I think I was like playing off Wispy's point of like the like literal line to like go somewhere.
See, that's the thing is I totally.
Well, that's what it is in Path of Fire too.
Right.
Like the zones kind of go down.
Well, that's,
okay, I'm sorry.
I totally understand them kind of blazing a trail towards where we are in the ultimate confrontation with Kralkatorrik, so to speak. But it's one of those things where it's just like, do we need so many maps to do that?
No.
Can we condense the content and then make it more rich? Like I talked about it on Talking Squid at one point, is that the Mouth of Torment could have been a meta map all to itself. Like the assault on the Mouth of Torment could have been a meta map.
Yeah, I would agree. And it like, just to go back to my like flub right there, it's because the content's not memorable that I just totally forgot that. Like, I'm just like, just to use that as an excuse, like I totally forgot some of the maps that happened. And we just talked about Thunderhead Keep.
Yep.
And I totally didn't even realize that like it was outside Alona. Because, like, it's just because like the stuff has been so like routine that like I go in and I do the content and I'm not in the game as much anymore too. So
right.
I kind of forgot. But yeah, like going back to the point that I was talking about like side content, that's what I think like dungeons would create. And it's a shame looking back at, I guess, when Guild Wars 2 was first being made, we don't have quests. That was a good thing at the beginning, I guess, because like getting away from that like classic MMO style of game was cool. Like, oh, no quests, but the hearts are kind of like quests, but they're dynamic and different. Okay, whatever, cool. But now hearts, everyone hates hearts. Like no one likes them anymore. I don't mind them, but if we had quests, we could tell cool lore that isn't necessarily what the main story is about. And yeah, current events kind of play into that, and maybe collections do a little bit too, but not as like nitty gritty as they could get.
Those are your quests. You have collections.
Yeah, but like, is that okay? Is that okay to settle with those collections?
I mean, they're literally quests. They're a checklist of, hey, go do this thing. And if you set a challenge for yourself to not use the wiki or to go to Delphi to find a video for it, then it's like a legit, I have to go out and explore the world and follow these hints in the collections list to figure shit out.
So the recent collections that you're talking about are what's that armor set called?
I don't remember the armor set. The only one I just remember doing, I'm working on Predator right now on my Warrior.
Yeah, like the legendary stuff kind of gets there. And some of the armor sets with the newer patches and some of the
weapon set that came with Thunderhead Keep.
Does that have a questline collection thing? I know it is, but like
fairly certain that it's a collection fueled quest setup.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Wispy brings up a point, is chop 50 million Elderwood. I kill 12 rats.
Yeah,
I mean, think about what is end game quest content in World of Warcraft. I'm not gonna. It's not
dailies.
It's not the granddaddy. Well, no, it is the granddaddy of MMOs because the great granddaddy would be EverQuest. But yeah, dailies. I remember doing dailies until my fingers were numb.
It kills me because I don't remember the name of that zone. This is so bad right now. The zone with that armor set, like that collection is really good. That's a really long collection.
It's the one with the Requiem armor. It's the
yes,
the one with the Sunspear Sanctuary.
If somebody could please tell us the name of that zone so we don't like explode.
It's the zone with the Sunspear Sanctuary.
Yes, yeah.
And the thing is,
Jahai Bluffs.
Okay, so hearts, I don't understand why people hate. They are literally go to a zone, do one of like 3 to 4 objectives, buy stuff from a vendor, leave.
Okay, so
It's daily. It's a daily
It's
quest.
a daily. But, like, do you like dailies in WoW?
I did them.
Yeah, we all did them. But, like, doesn't mean I necessarily enjoyed it.
Your daily achievements are dailies. Do you do those?
I'm capped on achievements. I don't have a reason to do dailies.
Yeah,
anymore.
but it's 2 gold a day.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I used to do dailies all the time, but since I've stopped playing,
Not so much.
Yeah, and Quo's right. Dailies do work.
They are work.
And they are work.
Well,
but they do work.
They do work, but that's I will admit, like, that's the thing though, is you're looking for PvE content and it's either a meta map where it is something that you can repeat, or it's dailies. Like, there's nothing you can do to create content that you can repeat without it eventually becoming hated because of repetition.
And that's why something new needs to be created.
But even then, if you create something new, it will be hated with repetition. Hearts were new. I enjoyed Hearts when I first started playing Guild Wars 2.
I think we could say that about everything. And I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's really a fair point. I get what you're saying. I get it. I do understand, and I think you're right.
Well, that's the problem is that, like, if they implement something new, in 6 months down the line, we're going to be having the same conversation. It's like, I want them to do something new, and it's just like, we just talked about this. There's only so many new... like, this is why I think they designed the game with 3 distinct game modes, to get people to rotate so that they can eventually come back to a slice of the pie and enjoy it again.
I mean, it's a good... yeah, that's... I don't think you're wrong in saying that, but that's not how the game works at all.
It isn't? Why not? That's how I work with the game. I've been playing a lot of WW. Now that the War Claw's out, I used to play a lot of PvP, and before that I was raiding.
But not everyone plays like you and me.
No.
I was switching a lot between PvP and PvE and War v World at a time. Like, at some points I was in between all 3 and sometimes just 2. But
well, then the bright side of Guild Wars 2 is the fact that there's no sub fee, and you literally get free content just for logging in for 2 seconds, and then you can do it at your leisure. I'll admit, I haven't finished the Living Story yet. So I can stop playing Guild Wars 2 whenever, and they're like, hey, new Living Story. I can't play that right now, mostly because I'm just burned out on the game, but, you know, I'll log in, I'll unlock it from my account, and I'll come back.
I think my real point of this whole thing is really fighting for the fact, like, I was thinking about it today, and I was just like, you know, like, this has been something I've bitched about for a long time. Of just like, there's just like, no, the PvE content currently in Guild Wars 2 doesn't motivate me as much as I would like it to. And then I was thinking today, and I'm like, what if they came out with an expansion that, like, they introduced some sort of, like, I don't want to say revolutionary, that's what I was going to say. Some new PvE content that really redefined Guild Wars 2. And really was like, holy shit, like, dungeons like this have never been done. But, like, oh, like, look what dungeons were before, and now they're totally rehauled, and wow, this is going to bring, like, a whole new breath of life into the game for the next expansion or whatever. I think that's what we need. It's not something that's going to come out in a content update, like, between expansions, you know? It's going to be something that comes out during an expansion. And I don't think raiding was that PvE content either, because raiding is raiding. That's the end of that. Like, what we got in Guild Wars 2 raids are what WoW raids are to an extent. I don't think they're very... You don't agree?
No. Having raid led and main tanked in World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2 raids are...
Let me rephrase. The difficulty and the way you gear up is very different. But I'm just talking about in the way you, like, consume raids. You do them every week, and, like, maybe you're progressing, maybe you're on farm. Like, I just mean in the way you, like, do them per week, not necessarily the way that you gear up for them. And like,
honestly, just the baseline combat, the baseline combat system of Guild Wars 2 makes Guild Wars 2 raids different.
Yeah. But I just mean in the way, like, you consume them, and I guess the story in them, I feel is necessarily the same on, like, a base level.
Then at the same point, like, dungeons are the same as fractals in the way that you consume them.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
Well, no. It's just, you just do them once a day and you're done. Like that's the problem is if you look at things on like that high of a level, that, you know, raids in WoW and raids in Guild Wars 2 are the same thing and that you do them once a week. Well, yeah, but they're different in the fact that like the game itself is a completely different style of game.
Yeah.
Like you can go in with your like fucking Teapot with his 10-man necro raid. I think one of the speed clears that was posted from Raka in the Guild Wars 2 speed clears for the last patch, it was like a sub 2-minute Veil Guardian. Like it's no, Wispy, they're not.
Yeah, they're not.
Guild Wars 2 raids are not like DPS. This is not. Fuck, what was the name of the stupid abomination in Nex Ramos? Not Putricide. That was, no, it was the first boss in Abomination Quarter. I can't remember, but like that was the DPS.
Fuck. Yeah.
Like even like Gorseval is a DPS check boss, and even Gorseval is not just a punch him until he's dead. He has mechanics.
Yeah, like the raids aren't easy per se. Some bosses are easier than others, and some wings are way too hard. And I think the Mithrite Gambit raid is like a good balance between, you know, the difficulties. I think it's definitely the best raid they've put out. Yeah, I wouldn't say there any like one wing is like a total
abomination
pushover.
Patchwork.
There you go.
Where you literally just, the tank stands here, the off tank stands here because Patchwork did a 1-2 hit, and then everybody else stood behind Patchwork and just DPS the ever-loving shit out of him.
Des says I lost a lot of confidence for group content and their innovation when they had to go to the Holy Trinity. Yeah,
they don't have the, like, you do need somebody who has to heal, but that's just because
but like that, like I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Guild Wars 2 or Arena has gone back on a lot of those like things they a lot of those, you know, those establishing things like in their manifesto when they first started that video, like of no Trinity. Well, we have a Trinity again. It's not like a hard Trinity, but for raiding, it's necessary.
Well, the thing is though, even your tank where you technically have the boss glued to a single target because of a thing, it's like literally the tank is whoever has the highest toughness, which can literally be highest toughness by 1. So you can be a tank with a single toughness infusion or a single change of a trinket or an amulet. Like I swap out my amulet for a soldier's amulet and suddenly I'm a tank.
Yeah.
You're not really
a definition of a tank, but
you're not really.
You're an aggro holder.
and then the other thing is, like I mentioned, you know, before, Teapot's 10-man necro raid. There is no, like, there are healing support necro specs, like with some blood stuff and wells, but none of it is like the standard healer of I cast heal on this person. Like that's Druid and to an extent Tempest. And maybe Guardian?
Yeah, Firebrand's
but Guardian, and I'm talking about when raids came out, like with just Heart of Thorns. Like,
oh, okay. Well, I would disagree with you then, but
you can cut back on healing by just having people play better because of action combat style. You couldn't cut out a healer in World of Warcraft by playing better.
Correct.
I mean, sure, you could do like some stupid crazy stuff with gear checks, but that was because there was gear progression in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the thing, is that it just there's kind of a soft trinity in Guild Wars 2.
100%. Yeah, there is.
Kind of, but it is very, very loose. And then you've got stuff like most of the fights. Then you have stuff like Slothosaur, where it's just aggro is assigned at random, and you all have to be willing to kite the boss around as a magic enhanced beast is just randomly picking targets. So like there are mechanics like that all over the place. Matthias fights the person farthest away from him, I think. I can't remember Matthias's aggro rules. He might have been a toughness tank too, but at the same point in time, I'm like, you have 10 toughness more than someone else.
How does he pick who you aggro? I forget off the top of my head. But kind of getting back to my point, I just think Arena needs to innovate PvE content. Like they did it once, I think they can do it again, but they just haven't been. Especially, not being in an expansion, and we're not going to be in another expansion, I guess, anytime soon. Probably, right? I think it's appropriate to say that.
Well, we are rolling right from season 4 to season 5, so I don't think we're going to get an expansion after this. And I'm not like season 5 is going to be another 6 to 8 episodes, so we're easily looking at another year to 2 years of content from season 5. I'm not terribly worried about an expansion coming anytime soon. Also, the game's not ready for another set of elite specs.
I don't think we need. I mean, I think we've had this conversation. Maybe we were talking about not talking straight at some point, but like, yeah, elite specs. I think you were the one who brought up the point to me that like elite specs would just essentially imbalance the game eventually.
It was either me or Age.
Yeah, like elite specs would imbalance the game, and eventually everyone can do everything, but
right.
like the game would be so grand, it would just be so hard to. Like, what the fuck is this?
See, that's the thing when I talk about, like, with Guild Wars 2, I can, playing a single class, perform all 3 roles, for the most part. If I gear and trait properly with the proper skills and weapons.
Yeah, as a Guardian.
Every Guardian, Druid, like, everybody has some kind of damage, like, bunker build, a damage build, and a support build. Mm-hmm. Support doesn't necessarily mean healing.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But it's one of those things where you can be tanky and do something with that, and it doesn't necessarily mean, standing in front of the boss and tanking it.
Yeah, and taking damage.
DPS is kind of the easiest to define because you are doing the big damages, but you've got power or condi, and whatever flavor you want to do for that, because there are bleed and burn and I mean, shit, I wonder if somebody is there a poison DPS build? I don't know. But we're harping on a lot about Guild Wars 2 and the balance of this works, but this ties back to the fact that PvE content is not nearly as shallow as people seem to think with the current PvE content right now. It is, like, even dungeons right now. I know Kitten Theory talks about doing solos. I don't know if she does them anymore because I know she plays Chrono, and she's been having problems with the changes that were made to Chrono recently. But people doing solos or duos for fractals, that's a thing. It's kind of gotten to the point in Guild Wars 2 where, yeah, sure, a lot of stuff has been played out, but like you kind of have to play the game how you make of it. It's almost like modded Minecraft where you've hit post scarcity. I was actually talking with Bog about this earlier today when we were talking about, I think Satisfactory came up in his chat. The whole point of modded Minecraft is to get the world set up where you have infinity of everything. Mm-hmm. And then you can just kind of do whatever you want at that point. Now, Guild Wars 2, you can't literally do whatever you want because the game's not set up to allow you to do that. But I'm thinking about working on yet another gear build for my Guardian just because of having fun in WW. So I really don't think that it's nearly as shallow. And as much as I like the idea, like the promise, I love your thought about, they need the next big thing, but I don't know what that next big thing is.
I literally wanted to just say, just because I'm talking about the next big thing doesn't mean I fucking know what that next big thing is. Because frankly, I have no fucking idea. And we've talked about this before, like with MMOs. Like, what is the next big MMO? What does that mean? I have no idea. I really don't. Like, I really can't sit here and say, this is what I want. Hey, Dungeons, I've had an idea of what I want for a while. But there's something that we're not saying that they could do that is what we need.
Okay, so one thing that I've always loved, I don't know if you're familiar with the Dawn of War series.
Not really.
RTS game, Warhammer 40K. Dawn of War 2 introduced a horde mode, a PvE horde mode, where you play...
Was that the most recent one to come out? Sorry.
Dawn of War 2? There is a Dawn of War 3, but it's completely different from the way Dawn of War 2 played. Dawn of War 2 is an RTS with up to 4 squad. You only really control 4 squads, but they're basically all hero units, to borrow from Warcraft 3. Oh god, Deo, I'm tired of battle royales too. Apex Worlds, please no. But in Dawn of War 2, they implemented a horde mode where you choose a hero from one of the factions in the game, and it is you and 2 other people, and you just fight wave after wave after wave after wave of enemies. And there's a level mechanic, and then you also get loot throughout the fighting, and you just go until you all die.
Yeah.
Now we're talking like to make this equivalent, and I know you'll appreciate the reference. You are effectively Sauron at the start of the start of Fellowship, fighting the armies of men. You are sweeping a hand and knocking back 30 people and killing them.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of horde mode I'm talking. Like, they can implement that where it's you and however many players, and they're just like, yeah, target caps are gone for offensive skills. Have fun. Can you imagine a target capless meteor storm? Yeah. Target capless
fucking annihilating everything.
What's the Condi spread from Necros?
I don't know. I don't play Necro.
Yeah, like
Necro's chat.
Tavik knows. Because Tavik knows what a hot mess that they all are. Epidemic. There we go.
Oh, Epi. Yeah.
Yeah. Epidemic. Target capless. Hits everything in the range of AoE for it.
Yeah, I knew that one.
Like, well, see, that's the thing, Wispy. If it's a small number of people on an instanced map, they can set the server resources to kind of combat that. That's like they even implemented that in D&D 4th edition, where they implemented the minion enemy type, where they literally have 1 HP. And a lot of D&D 4th edition tabletop abilities were multi-hits, so you could give your players this horde of enemies to fight, and they could feel like the demigods that you basically were by the end of a campaign, to just laying waste to giant swaths of enemies. Like Arcane Wave for Elementalist, that giant AoE that auto-crits everything in it.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. 30 enemies dead. But it's one of those things where, like, that's something they could implement. I don't know how or, where that would fit, but yeah, sure, they could do that, and that's something that could be repeatable, because if the waves of enemies are randomized in some way, like, say you're in the mists and you're fighting off, I don't know, random branded mist enemies because there's a branding crystal lodged somewhere. I don't know. It's one of those things where they need to add, there's apparently a MOBA PvP map in Final Fantasy XIV.
What do you mean, apparently?
Like, there is literally a MOBA PvP map in Final Fantasy XIV that is apparently feature complete enough that people say it could be its own game.
So it's not in the game?
No, it is. It is in Final Fantasy XIV. Okay. You need to be able to play Final Fantasy XIV to get to it.
So you haven't played this?
I haven't played it. I've just been reading about Final Fantasy XIV because I was curious about the game.
That was kind of weird to me, but yeah, I understand what you're saying now.
But it's just one of those things where it's like, they could take that entire map and put it over here and make it its own game. Are we talking stuff like that for PvE content, or are we talking like...
Well, maybe we were, and that's the layoff. Maybe there was something like that. Maybe it's not this mobile app we're talking about. Maybe something else is going on that is what you're saying. And I was just kind of thinking about the layoffs from MarinaNet. Of course, the layoffs are a negative thing. It's never a good thing with people lose their jobs. But there's been a lot of changing of the guard recently, even before the layoffs. A lot of we got a new gameplay director. I forget her name off the top of my head. I know who she is. I follow her on Twitter.
Jennifer.
I don't know her
Schultz?
last name. Yeah, I know her name's Jennifer.
I can see her Twitter tag in my head.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure a few others came in. But maybe the layoffs for ArenaNet create something good out of this. I don't know. Maybe with the changing of the guard, the changing of people around, like there's more initiative, more want to do something new, and maybe that helps the game, because I don't think necessarily the game's in the greatest state right now. It's not a bad state. I think last year was really bad. I think this year everything's kind of all right for now.
No, I understand. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you do kind of need new eyes on a project.
Yeah,
eventually.
A lot of the people at ArenaNet, and you can definitely count. There's more of them on. You can count more than 10 that have been there for a long time, and maybe that's not necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying they should be fired, but I'm saying new eyes are a good thing. New people on projects.
At that point, it depends entirely on how resistant they are to change from new vision. Which, without actually knowing the people, I certainly know how that feels, being a new person coming into a dev team, and the dev lead is not really looking to change the way they do things.
Yeah, not wanting to hear input of criticism
But and I can't speak to the culture at ArenaNet for how that may or may not be. Getting new people, having people leave while as abruptly as it was, kind of sucks. Like the way the layoffs happen, that sucks. That's terrible. People leaving of their own accord, like looking to move to another job or another field or what have you. That's good on you for expanding your life. You do whatever you need to do. Hopefully everybody who left that way left on good terms. But yeah, changing of the guard does often bring with it change in implementation.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this big innovation that you're looking for is really something that's even possible at this point.
Yeah, that's also true. It's a lot of I don't want to say talking out my ass, but just more wishing than maybe that might not happen. It could probably not happen. There's a good chance it won't happen. But in my opinion, I think something needs to happen for PvE content to be better and grander, and not as, I don't think it's shallow, as you said, but I think it's being stretched a little bit.
Well, I think that's more leaning towards my point on the fact that, like, the stretching is more the fact that you're going to see fewer and fewer people in locations that aren't the newest map. And I've railed against that ever since the statement was made that they're going to time lock maps, because I lived that in World of Warcraft. And people complained up and down in Cataclysm when they tried to update all the old maps. And the new leveling experience, all of the new maps, like how they redid all of Azeroth, people complained about it. And it's like, there are so many better quests, so much better story, so much less jank. It's just, it was one of those things where it's like people are,
and Blizzard tried, and I think I give them credit for that, and kind of like Bethesda with Fallout 76, like they just rolled out an update, and like they have a content release schedule, and I'm like, at least they're trying. You can kind of see like they're not just leaving it out. And at least,
I did hear that 76's update today was bad, and it broke a lot of shit.
Oh, I didn't hear that at all. Okay.
But that's probably more technical rather than, what they're actually trying to implement.
Yeah.
So.
And, credits to Blizzard for trying to do something new with that content. But yeah, like it's tough. I think it's tough. But I think we do just maybe like kind of wrapping up and coming to a conclusion. To my point, we need more more PvE content.
I agree. We do need more PvP content.
Yeah, why don't we talk about that?
That's another show. That's a whole nother show. And
something's got to be done, something's happened that has to happen.
I tend to agree that I feel that from core Guild Wars 2 to Heart of Thorns and then back to Path of Fire, I feel like there is a large swing in the style. Like, you had Path of Fire is much more like classic Guild Wars 2, where it is the explorative maps, big open areas with little things, hidden places, and event chains that just kind of meander across the map. And then Heart of Thorns is like, you can't walk into the jungle without being shanked. The entire map does a thing. And I kind of want somewhere in the middle with both kinds of maps. And fewer maps. I think that it's doing a disservice to not only the players, I think it's doing a disservice to the designers for them having to come up with all of these locations. And perhaps, you know, your point about the cookie cutterness of the maps. I don't know if that's a Heart of Thorns is Pocket Raptor. Yes, Killian. It's just you don't see them until they're all jumping on you. And why do I have 37 bleeds? Why am I dead? But with the cookie cutterness of the map, maybe it's design burnout. Because every single update, we're getting a new map. So they kind of take these shortcuts where it's like X number of hearts, X number of POIs, X number of vistas, etc. You know, maybe that's the issue, is that, you know, do fewer maps would allow for more varied content. So maybe you would get the more investment that you're looking for a thing to do.
Yeah, at this point, it's quality that it's really what it's about for me. I think that's what you're kind of saying. Like, just not cranking out a zone for the sake of cranking out a zone.
Right. Like, I honestly, people complained about the wait for Heart of Thorns. Like, we're doing, the game is Silver Wastes now. Heart of Thorns was a lie.
It definitely was for a while.
I wasn't bothered by that. I wasn't.
I guess looking back, I wasn't, but I'm not sure if I was in the moment, to be honest.
It was one of those things where it's like, I had stuff to do. I was capable of, you know, setting goals for myself. I can wait for good content. I don't need a hard release date, but I know there's anticipation there for a lot of people. But yeah, I think we've kind of hit the breaking point. I think this is the first time I haven't met in the middle with the guest. Because I don't think
we have really been very opposite.
Yeah, like
I was kind of like, wow, Mathanis really is either like really like frustrated with what I'm saying, or
I'm not frustrated with what you're saying. It's just one of those things where it's like, is it feasible? Like, can they actually like spend the time to make the next big thing, or should they be focusing on doing what they're doing better? So, because it's like, how many times can you try and make the next big thing and fail, and then people either leave or they leave while they're waiting for the next big thing? So, I guess I would say it's more realistic to make what they're doing now better than to try and hope for the good thing. But yeah, this is a vote to kick first. It only took us 22 episodes to get to this, where we didn't end up meeting in the middle somewhere for the.
And a long episode at that.
Very, very long. Well, it's kind of a heated debate. And for people who don't play Guild Wars 2, I'm pretty sure everything, like I referenced World of Warcraft a lot, if you play another MMO or anything, and there's a Choya on my shoulder.
With a tag on it.
Well, that's because we got it at a bar in Boston from ArenaNet. It has sentimental value. But
Ruby gave it to me.
Yeah, Ruby gave it to her. To her. She won this, and she jumped about a foot in the air because she never wins anything. But for those of you who don't play Guild Wars 2, I'm pretty sure you can listen to arguments and kind of apply it to the games that, you know, you guys play. For those of you watching on YouTube, the poll will be in the description. Go ahead and cast your vote for Keep or Kick. And remember, Kick is not less PvE content, though if that's what you're going for, please tell us why. It is for the same amount, but perhaps different. And Keep is, you know, Fenris wanting more PvE content, however that may be. So cast your vote, keep or kick. Tell us why in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, notification bell.
Yeah, I was like, don't forget the notification bell.
There. Be happy, Google overlords. For those of you on Twitch, we are live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Vote to Kick on twitch.tv/MadRealms. That's 2 A's in the Mad. I've been your host, Malthanis. You can find me on Twitter at MalthanisMMO. My guest this week, Anthony Fenris Ragucci. You can find him on Twitter at _the_gooch_. Yeah, I'm going to do that every single time you're on. You can also find more of his stuff on the Delco Nerd Network, where you can find that on Twitch and Twitter, Delco Nerd Network.
Twitter is at the Delco Nerds.
Oh, okay, at the Delco Nerds.
Twitch is correct, yeah.
Okay, so I believe, there must always be a Batman versus Superman?
There must always be a Batman v Superman.
How many times did you have to re-upload that?
I
Look at the pain in his eyes.
20.
Ugh. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming out tonight. For those of you on YouTube, thank you all for watching. I hope to see you all next time, and hope you all have a fantastic evening. Good night, everybody.
Bye.